All right, we're gonna just jump right into it. My name is James Black. The final artist, I guess I'm the final speaker today. So I know the rest of the class is ready to get out of here, but you're gonna have to listen to this. This is a capstone project. We had 10 days to do it. Rapid prototyping. And here's the agenda that we're gonna go through today. Basically, do an overview, the scope of the project. I'm gonna talk about the rail trail itself for a little bit. I'll show you the timeline, the components I used, my artistic inspiration, how I managed the product, where I put the sensors, the final forms, my intention, this maquette that I have in the classroom to show, and my contact. So this is my third project for the IoT bootcamp, thanks to Dr. Brian and EJ. I'm so grateful I was selected with the other three artists that you heard from earlier. The challenge was to create a temporary art installation to complement the larger project that's the rail trail. And my objectives were to, make a temporary interactive art piece and complete this within 10 days, apply the lessons from the class. But my goals were to create a modular construction, to use recycled materials, and to platform other artists. I wanted to integrate a dashboard with live data and to integrate safety features. So let me see if I can move this along just a little bit. There we go. Here's a couple of the other projects that we did in the class. I started off with a smart room controller, which I applied as a smart shop controller to my screen print shop, and a smart plant system. In this project, I started out with ideas, built the forms, coded, integrated the sensors, tried to illuminate it, and then created the dashboard. So about the rail trail itself, it's proposed to be a walking or biking trail near the Rio Grande Metro rail tracks. And some segments will feature public engagement areas where the city of Albuquerque aims to feature public art. And what I wanted to make is something that could work in a multitude of different situations. So this is the timeline of the project. Basically, a lot of time went into just figuring out what I was going to do, blue sky, sketching, concept. And then I gathered the materials I needed, spent a lot of time coding and building working on the structure, and then working with the RGB shift, which I'll show you in a little bit, which is a feature that I uncovered accidentally. So these are just some of the sketches that I was making early on. I knew I needed a form that would be easily manipulatable. I'm not a whiz at CNC like my man Owen, so I had to come up with something that was strong from the get-go. I chose to upcycle these aluminum frames for my shop. I run a t-shirt shop downtown. This material ends up being used and ends up in my attic. I'm familiar with the form. I know it's lightweight, and I know I could drill into it and make hinges, manipulate the frames themselves. And since they're scrap, the big idea here was to upcycle them, to recycle them. In garment decoration and in IoT, there's a lot of waste. So we want to fight against that. That's what the frame looks like with mesh in it. Of course, there's no mesh in the ones that I used. And we use the NeoPixels in the microcontroller. Here I am drilling into the frames and little doggy for scale. They're about 20 by 24 inches. Here you can see the NeoPixel strip itself getting lit up inside the frame. Right here is the component that is most important for the performance mode of this structure or this installation, and that's the MSG EQ7. The reason this is important, the reason I paused the video here to show you, is it has this line-in input jack. And for me, I wanted there to be the ability for musical performers to interact with this installation, especially DJs and stuff like that. That's part of my background, is working with music and DJ music. So on that little port there on the breakout board, you can run a headphone jack into it. So conceivably, a DJ could run a line out and have some control over the lighting system if they were to be performing along the rail trail. So the MSG EQ7 is just something I searched around and found, and it's the way to go if you don't want to have to solder components together. After a few days of studying it, and studying other projects, I was able to cobble together code to make it work. And it basically breaks the music or sound coming in into 7 different bands, like bass, treble, so on. I coded the system to where when the music comes in, the lights light up at a different to the different bands. This is a look at the data sheet. This is something we learned how to read in the class, which I had no idea how to do before. And this shows us how to program that specific component, the MSG EQ7. And so I just want to talk about how this installation has 2 modes. The performance mode is, for the DJ or busker to plug into and have some lighting up while they're performing. But the other mode is for like awareness and safety. So here's a little demo of this lighting up to sound. Excuse me. And kind of what happened here was a happy accident. I was noticing how the images kind of like had a slight movement to them. And so I got really inspired by that. Jumping back over to the awareness mode, these are the components that make that work: the ultrasonic motion sensor, GPS, and the low range, low power system of LoRa. So the ultrasonic motion sensor does just that. It senses motion. If it's not in performance mode, this would light up, either encouraging somebody to get closer or acting kind of as a security feature for itself. The other components are the OLED screen and the cloud services of Adafruit IO and Node-RED to use to make an interactive dashboard. We can display messages to the OLED screen like warnings and things like that. And Adafruit is where we send data up to the cloud to process it, and we can send that to Node-RED to create a user interface dashboard. This is a look at how I put everything together on the breadboard with a motion sensor, LoRa, manual safety button, GPS, OLED, the NeoPixels, and in this case, the particle boron, so we could have cellular service. So the ultrasonic distance sensor, I just coded that to flash the lights blue or white, depending on when somebody is approaching. Basically, if there's no performer and the screens are not being triggered by an audio out signal, the screen installation could serve as a safety beacon. So to further illustrate the feature, I added a text message integration and a manual safety button that could be used to alert authorities of a potential emergency situation trackside. So I imagine if nobody's performing and these are just sitting around, they could actually alert authorities if there's a problem, kind of like, a blue pole at any university. Before, that was just an example of the motion tests. So something important, not only for the project and class assignment, but for the structure itself, is to know what kind of conditions it's under. And by creating a data feed, live data feed, I can know if it's too windy to take the structure out, if it's too hot, something like that. But what we couldn't do is get live information of where the train was. There's no live data feed that I could plug into via API. So my solution was to create a GPS LoRa module. And if you can imagine, that would be attached to the rail runner and let people who are along the trail, if they were experiencing this structure, know that the train was approaching. This is a look at the Node-RED flow and how the GPS LoRa module worked. I got a little miniature, took it to the track, because we couldn't really get on the train to do it how we wanted to. So I just simulated this. Here's what a PCB board looks like for a GPS module. And we learned how to make PCB boards in this class. At the end, that's something we can do to make our devices like more compact and less like beta. Here's another look at my Node-RED flow that shows basically all of the graphic user interfaces that can show up, so people can observe the real-time data either on their cell phone or on a computer or something like that. And this is a shot of the actual live data. This is a flow chart of how the data goes through the GPS system. And just to show you that I have live weather feeds of temperature and wind. and that we have a live feed of where the train is and the map of the whole rail runner system. So basically, the idea is they're just so not just be a structure that sits on the trail, but that can also deliver information. So if passengers wanted to get that, we could easily add a QR or something so they could scan it. Or if they don't know how to do that, there's different ways to deliver the information. Manual safety button, again, this is just something I wanted for safety, and that last clip was showing that if you press the button, it would actually text message me. So we could integrate that to where it could text message any authority, just like lighting up a safety beacon, letting somebody know what's going on along the trail. So before I mentioned some happy accidents, and this is my inspiration, the psychedelic poster artist, Victor Moscoso. When I was lighting up this stuff, I thought I saw it shift a little bit, and I remembered a exhibition I went to the Denver Art Museum with psychedelic poster art, where the 2D art was actually animated a little bit. So I tried to use the neopixels and the imagery to push that a little bit further, and that's something I want to push along this project. I think that you'll see that in just another clip. Give me just a sec for this to run through. So these are Victor Moscoso's images, which you probably recognize one or two of them because they're so iconic. And you can see how there's an RGB kind of shift going on, the one on the far right there. And that's something that I wanted to integrate into my work. So I did some RGB testing, and then I lit it up with the neopixels. And you can see here how the image shifts a little bit. And this is just another demo of the NeoPixel strip mapped to the MSG EQ7, going to sound, and the diffused light effect. This is just another lighting test with the structure put together on the screen printing frames. Now I have attached plexiglass, so I can easily slide different types of art in and out. Again, I want to profile and platform other artists. So basically the idea is that if this were set up at some point, one artist could be profiled for a little while, their imagery could be lit up, and then we could take that out and slide in a different artist's work. There could be one musician with a bunch of different artists' art in front. It's all interchangeable. It's just going back to like the modular nature of the project. The rail trail, we're not exactly sure what it's going to be, how it's going to work. So this project was a response to that, so it can change along the way. Just a couple more color shift tests so you can see what I was seeing with some of my imagery blinking to the beat, so to speak. So I hinged up a couple more screens, and I wanted to show that this could be, you know, a screen that goes in front of performers, or it could become a cube with a plant inside. It could be a diamond shape. It could be configured as a hanging structure. It could be flat on the wall, or it could go flat on the ground. So again, going back to the modular nature of the design, we're not exactly sure where the rail trail is going to go. So we're making this modular to change along the way. I worked on the laser cutter to make a little maquette. And then I worked with a Dremel to cut holes, which I found pretty challenging. I didn't get everything exactly where I wanted with the sensors. So today we're kind of in prototype mode with some Velcro and stuff like that. This is some of the final forms, and you can see the sensor, how I placed the motion sensor, I placed it on the outside. Here I am laser cutting some tiny frames so I can show how this simple structure can work out in a bunch of different ways. And that's the sound of spray paint, if you never heard it before. So again, a platform for other artists. I hope to deploy it in a field test soon with DJ behind it, and highlight another visual artist's work inside of the frames. And again, different art can easily be slid in and out, so the visual imagery is interchangeable. That's important to me because I think that this being a platform for other artists on a train platform would be a cool attraction. Here's just some of the code, especially for the MSG EQ7. Again, special shout out to Katie for her color library. We worked as a team to kind of get some of this code figured out, and it was a really cool challenge. And I really like that component, if I haven't mentioned it enough already. So here's a couple more pages of the code in C++. And this is just basically turning the lights on and off depending on the sound input, whichever band it's coming from. This is just a little shot of my project management, which I used Trello to keep myself on point. I've been managing teams for years, and this is just one way that I do it, whether I'm managing students or my workers at my t-shirt shop, but this is how I kept myself on point. This structure can grow, and this is just part of it now. It could be a zigzag, it could be a planter. I could add a soil moisture sensor, and we could have live feed from plants on the trail. But right now, it's either performer mode or awareness mode. With this, I hope to communicate a vision of the future along the rail trail, and my intention was to create a platform for other artists. It's just the first stage of something that I hope to be illuminated and modular, so it can change as we go, and safe, and of course, fun. Before this class, I never wired anything up. I hadn't made a circuit. I never written a line of code. So Brian and EJ taught me a whole slew of new skills that I can now apply to my life, to artwork. And now I notice when I'm out talking to people, I have new stuff to talk about, and I'm making new friends, right? Like I'm in a whole new network, you know? So I just want to thank Sherry, I want to thank EJ and Brian and everybody in this class, because I learned so much from everybody. And yeah, hit me up if you have any questions. My email is here. Follow me on Instagram, and I do a radio show on Sub FM every other Sunday.